the guy that still holds the crown for greatest debut has got to be Simp.
Awakening had the best debut in history.
Oh my God, they're the top team again. Praise Lord Scumpy.
Honestly, they're winning the next event, and here's why.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Contesting the Point. I'm your host, Malik Forté, and today I am joined by Benson and Maven, fresh off the Minnesota Home Series. How's it going, guys?
I'm feeling good. I got a Peloton 3 days ago. I've worked out every day. I basically am an NFL caliber athlete currently.
Not sure about that one, Clay. No, it feels good, man. It feels fantastic. Honestly, I'm just excited to have the original duo of this show back at it again. I don't get to debate against Clint that much anymore.
That's right.
Because we bring everyone else in, so it's good to be back, man. I always love talking Call of Duty with Clint.
I missed you, buddy.
Oh, yeah. This one's going to be hot fire, hot fire. Well, for those of you who don't know, let's go over the rules real quick for everybody. I'm going to present a headline from the CDL. I'm then going to give a hot take on the story. One of the guests will defend the hot take while the other attacks it. All award points for convincing arguments only. And after 3 stories, whoever has the most points wins 60 seconds to pop off in our Astro listen up moment. Fellas, that sound good to you?
Woo. Sounds great.
I'm excited.
All right, well, without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop into our first story. We saw one of the most insane runs in CDL so far this year at the Minnesota Home Series. The Florida Mutineers bulldozed through all the top teams to take home their second home series win. In groups, they sent the Huntsmen down to the lower bracket. In the semifinals, they took out the Empire in a game that went the distance. And in the finals, they dismantled the Atlanta FaZe and Respawn, taking that win 3-1. This is obviously an amazing feat. But what makes it a little bit crazier is the fact that they did it with a brand new player in their lineup by the name of Owakening. So with that being said, my hot take is that Awakening had the best debut of any player in Call of Duty esports history. That is a hot take right there. And for Maven, we got you on the attack. So please tell me, has anyone done it better than Awakening in their first game?
Yes, but I'd like to preface this by saying the fact that he's in this conversation is ludicrous. I mean, the guy started competing like a year ago. It's insane to think he's there. And I think if we were just looking at the results part of it, as far as his team winning and who they went through, I think absolutely. But the guy that comes to mind, I think the guy that still holds the crown for greatest debut has got to be Simp. When you look back at CWL London, his first tournament as a pro player, it was insane what he was able to do. His KD overall was a 1.351. That was second of all players, highest as an SMG. When you think back then, being a non-Maddox player was just outrageous. He was number 1 in S&D KD, number 1 in Control KD, top 5 in Hardpoint KD. The thing that separates him for me, and why I think it's so ludicrous, is after that tournament, we thought Simp was the best player in the game. That was just insane. It was his first tournament, and after one tournament of play, we were all like, oh my God, he's the best player alive. Now, I don't get that sense yet with Awakening. He had a hell of a tournament, hell of a win, but it takes a lot to pass that Simp status. He didn't quite do it for me.
All right. So what do you have to say about that, Benson? We draw that same conclusion with Awakening or anything close to that?
I mean, if you're gonna argue anything, right, it has to be Simp. But Clint, the obvious elephant in the room is, well, did Simp win on his debut? The answer is no. The stats, of course, were fantastic, but the end result wasn't quite there. You look at who Florida Mutineers beat this past weekend, it was the best teams in the game. Whichever order you personally want to put those 3 teams in, they're the best in the game, or were the best in the game. And he came out, had fantastic performance on his debut. And bear in mind, before this, you look at his season so far as an amateur player, top 48 performance in Challengers and a top 8 performance in Challengers. Then he comes into the league and wins his first event. That, to me, is truly incredible. It's to the point, no, I think the only person you can argue that may have had a better debut is Simp. But for me, I'm giving it to Awakening. I think the guy deserves it.
And I get that. I guess I view when we're talking about Awakening, it becomes an individual conversation. When you talk about what the teams they went through, them winning the event, that's much more of a team conversation. So I guess that's why I stick with Simp. Like, individually, he was the best player at the event, which is insane for a debut. And now Awakening was up there. I mean, he was probably, a top 10 player there, maybe top 5 player there. He was very, very good. But I guess I look at it more from an individual perspective, and it hasn't dethroned Simp for me. That's still one of the more outrageous debuts I've ever seen.
Individually, Awakening, I think he was 7th in the top 10 KDs. The only
he was
player
good. He was good for sure. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
The only player above him that played the same games was his teammate Skies with a 1.3. So he was doing very, very well himself.
But did you walk away thinking Awakening is the best player in the game?
So here's what I will say to that. The answer is no, to answer your question. But the thing about Simp was, if you think back at what he achieved on that season, right? A second place, first MVP, give Awakening some time, right? Because if he comes to his next event and wins, if he goes to the World Championship and wins, that's the best debut, period. Like, there can be no argument. So for me, I think as an individual performance, the answer is probably no, right? But for an achievement, the answer is definitely yes. But give him maybe a little bit more time and let's assess the same question at the end of the year, and then you can draw a direct comparison.
I guess one thing I struggle with too, and this goes against my core because I'm not a big proponent of arguing online versus LAN, because I do think if you perform online, you will eventually perform on LAN. But I do think it is a little bit easier to get comfortable. Like, I think put it this way, I think in like a finals versus phase, he did feel a lot less pressure sitting at home in his chair playing at home than he would have on a grand final on a main stage. So I do think there's a difference there, and that's why I put a little bit more stock in Simpson. That's not Awakening's fault. There's nothing he could do. We are under circumstances we can't control, but I think we've seen some AM players just transition a little bit faster than maybe they would have.
a little bit easier, I think. They're probably sat playing in their PJs as opposed to sat playing on a main stage. So it's definitely easier.
It's a little different.
Yeah, definitely. Well, with that being said, Maven, I'm going to give this round to you 5-4. I think that you made some pretty clear points about this individual performance of Awakening versus Simp in that CWL debut that he had last year, which I, pretty much second to none. So with that being said, our count at the end of round 1 is Maven 5, Benson 4. On to our next story. One of the biggest shockers to come from this weekend was the Huntsmen going out in group stages. Now, they lost to Florida again to start things off. Then they 3-0'd the Toronto Ultra, but then lost 3-2 to the low-ranked LA Gorillas. Now, it was just 3 weeks ago that everybody was calling the Huntsmen a clear top 3 team, but now I would say that that's pretty much in flux. Considering last weekend's performance, my hot take is that Prestinni was not the answer to all the Huntsmen's problems. That's pretty extreme, I know, but Benson, what do you have to say, man? How can anyone still be on the Prestinni hype train after what we witnessed last weekend?
Absolutely we can. Hold on a minute. Let's not get short-term memory. First event with the Huntsmen, what happened? They won. And I know what Clint is probably smiling, ready to say.
That's one weekend.
Well, who was there? Who played? The top teams were there. Oh, it's just one weekend.
I am smiling, just FYI.
And to be fair, that's a decent argument. However, did we see improvement in their individual play? Yes, we did. For me, you compare what Prestinni has brought to the table, and it's fantastic. There is an obvious flaw with Chicago Huntsmen right now, which is just they cannot buy a win against the Florida Mutineers, which is bizarre to think. But they definitely need to fix that. But Prestinni has, without question, improved that team. Not necessarily just in gameplay, but just the mental aspect, the vibes, if you will. Arstee's playing with his brother again. When we spoke to Arstee's on a podcast a few months ago, he said, I feel kind of like I'm by myself. I feel like whenever we're having discussions about the game, it's always me versus everyone. There's now a little bit of support that's come through. The team morale definitely improved, and I don't think there can be any argument about that. This is just one weekend. The same argument that you're going to give me about last weekend, I can give you about this weekend. It's one poor performance, sure. I think it's too early to jump the gun on a team which has been top 3 all year.
All right, so you're cutting them a little bit of slack. What you got to say about that, man?
Yeah, I'm not going to Prestinni exactly, but I am going at this concept that he came in and fixed everything. They won that first event, and I feel like the entire Huntsman fan base is like, oh my God, they're the top team again. Oh, praise Lord Scumpy. Slow down. You didn't have FaZe at that event. You didn't have Empire at that event. You didn't have Mutineers at that event. They beat what? They beat Paris. They beat a Røkkr team that has been struggling. They beat a Subliners team that is improving. They beat a Royal Ravens team that is improving. They didn't beat any of the top dogs at that event. And we even said on Hardpoints, when Joe, Teep, Crowder, and myself were discussing it, like, we thought they looked good. We're happy that they won, but they proved nothing yet. They had proved nothing by getting that win. Nothing about their spot in the standings changed by adding Prestinni and getting the win there. Now, do I think they can improve and be a top team? Sure, but like, it's crazy because as much as I think Prestinni might help the role problem here, you're still losing Gunless, who is one of the best players in the history of Call of Duty, and there's no way around that. And we wondered how it would work when they match up against some of the top teams, like how would it boil down? And we didn't even really get to see that. Like, yes, they lost the Mutineers to get knocked in the lower portion of it, but we didn't get to see him versus Empire. We didn't get to see him versus FaZe. We still don't know exactly how that's going to be playing out for this particular squad. But for me, more than anything, this is what it comes down to for me. Because I know it was the S&D this weekend, but sometimes it's the hard point. Simp said in an interview that Call of Duty esports, a lot of times, a map comes down to a couple crucial moments, like a couple crucial plays. Like, you'll have a 10-minute map, but it can be decided by like 30 seconds. Like, 2 moments can be the difference where you have to clutch up, make a play, get a break, get a hold, get a clutch in S&D round, and that is what decides the map. All year, I feel like Huntsmen has struggled there. When they're playing against the top teams, when they need that big moment, that big play, that is where they struggle. And I don't know exactly how you fix that, because now you have Formal playing at kind of formal levels again, right? Like, he drops like what, a 1.28 this week, and he's getting back to that. But this weekend, I guess you could say mostly it comes down to the search, in the sense that they all like 0.5 to 0.7s. Like, they were not good in search, but if it's not search, it's hard point. Like, I don't know that Prestinni solves all their problems. I don't think he did. And that's not a knock to Prestinni. It's just a knock to Huntsmen as a whole. They're a vulnerable team.
Yeah, all right. But I do want to stay on Prestinni because that was my hot take. And I do feel like, you said, you talked about a lot of their other problems that they have, but yeah. Everybody was giving this solution to Prestinni. Everybody was championing Prestinni. He was like the MVP just a matter of a few weeks ago, and now it doesn't look like is so much the truth. So,
but that's what's funny about this. So if you take a look at Prestinni's stats just 3 weeks ago when they won, they're pretty spot on to what he did here. He had like a 0.9. He has a 0.9 here. That is what Prestinni is going to give you. Had they lost that event, people would have been giving Prestinni flack. But since they won the event, no one pointed out his stats. But that's just sort of what Prestinni is. You don't expect him to come in and drop a 1.1. That's just not what he's going to do. He is going to be the bait. He is going to play fast. He's going to be the route guy. Like, he's going to do a lot of the dirty work. It's hard. I guess what I'm saying is it's hard to let go at his stats, because that is what he has been his whole career.
Here's the big question, right? And to me, what answers this whole debate? Do you think Chicago would have had similar performances with Gunless? To me, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't think Chicago would have won that event with Gunless.
I do. I think they would have won that event with Gunless.
I personally disagree. I just don't think Gunless was fitting with that team at all. Morally, they were down in the dumps. They just did not look like a team who had good spirits, who even looked like they wanted to play. After Prestinni joined the team. Right, exactly. After Prestinni joins the team, though, they look like a team who wants to play Call of Duty again. The enjoyment was found again, and because of that, they win. Don't get me wrong, I think there's a big part which was kind of honeymoon phase. We talk about that so often. And then, if I'm honest, I think there was a little bit of complacency, maybe a little bit of laziness too, thinking maybe like their entire community was saying, oh, they are the best team in the game. They just won after making a team change. Not practicing search and destroy. Clint, I know you mentioned that as a massive, massive failure on their part, and it definitely is. But again, when you look big picture at the end of the year, I really, really do believe we will look back at that roster change and say, yes, Prestinni improved that team. I think just for morale alone, Chicago Huntsmen needed a change. And again, they won the first event with him. Let's not forget that.
It's maybe that's a conversation for 2-3 months from now. But
I think it probably is.
So far,
I think it probably is.
What did we have with Gunless? We had wins, we had duds. What did we have with Prestinni? A win and a dud. Like that's why it's. I don't know if it fixed it. I guess the big thing, as much as we want to talk about Prestinni, is it a problem with the overall core more than it is Prestinni and Gunless?
Ooh, I feel like that's a debate for another day, Clint.
Yeah, that's definitely a debate for another day. So I guess my hot take has pretty much been answered. Benson, I'm going to give you this round 4-3. I like Prestinni. And I think that there's potential for him to gel in and maybe perform better moving into the future. So I don't want to put all the blame on him when it could be a core issue that the entire team is suffering from that is kind of causing them to go on the skid that they've been having as of late. So with that being said, at the end of this round, we are all knotted up at 8 apiece. All right, time to get into our last story of the day. For the first time this season, we have events jumping off for back-to-back weekends. This weekend is the Paris Home Series, where we'll see the Atlanta FaZe, the Dallas Empire, the Florida Mutineers, the London Royal Ravens, the Paris Legion, the New York Subliners, the Optic Gaming LA, and the Toronto Ultra all throw down. This event is going to be crazy. Now, many people are probably already making a case for the Dallas Empire or the Atlanta FaZe getting some redemption after Florida took them out the last event. But my hot take is that the Florida Mutineers are going to win the Paris Home Series and take home back-to-back events. Yo, Maven, am I crazy for giving Florida back-to-back wins?
Yes, you are. And the reason that I have trouble believing is that I'm a great mathematician. I believe in statistics. Some of them called me like a bald Sir Isaac Newton. And let me take you through the Florida Mutineers, how it's gone for them. Atlanta, they get to a grand final, they get second. The event after that, Los Angeles, they get top 6. The event after that, they get first in Dallas. The event after that, they get top 8 in Florida. The event after that, they win here in Minnesota. As you see, there is a pattern, and I'm a great mind that sees these patterns that hide in the darkness. They literally have dud, win, dud, final, dud, win. Like that's how it goes. So there's nothing they can do. It's in the cards. They're going to come here. They're probably not even going to make a semifinal. That is your Florida Mutineers.
Even with it being kind of a, okay, I wouldn't say weaker tournament or pool of competition, but they have Awakening now, and they're also riding that high. So, and it is a back-to-back weekend. It's the first time this year.
I don't think it actually is that much weaker. Is it a little bit? Yeah, but not really. I mean, when you think about how much better Optic has gotten, how much better London has gotten, you still have FaZe and Empire here. This weekend is actually incredibly stacked. And the reason that FaZe is still my pick, Priesta was horrendous. And if we know anything about Priesta over the course of his career, he is one of the more talented and consistent players in any role he has to play. I think he is going to work his ass off to make sure he doesn't have another tournament like that. Because I don't know what was going on, but he dropped like a 0.58 in the grand final against them. I don't see that happening again. FaZe are still my favorite. Has not changed it due to that final. I don't think Priest is having a dud like that again.
Yeah, that was a rare sighting seeing Priester struggling the way he was for sure. But come on, Benson, you gotta throw me some bell on Florida, man. Like,
you know, I am very glad Clint decided to go the way he did with great performance, bad performance, great performance, bad performance. Because the reality of the situation is their first event on the year, if you exclude launch weekend, which I think we all kind of agreed didn't really tell us all that much. They finished second. Good performance, right? And this is at a time where we all wrote them out. The next event, you mentioned they finished, I think it was the top 8, right? But look at who they played. They get absolutely smashed by Atlanta FaZe, and they get beat by Dallas Empire, 2 of the best teams in the game at that time. Then they go to the next event, show massive signs of improvement, okay? Grand final. Then they go to their next event, which is their own home series, and they bomb out. Now, when you look at who they played there, the competition really wasn't all that much. The one thing you can say is, all right, there was an up-and-coming New York. I will give you that. That was a terrible, terrible performance from the Florida Mutineers. But honestly, they're winning the next event. And here's why. Here is why. I have been so against Florida for the most part this year because I just don't think they have the ability. I'm flat out wrong. They proved me wrong time and time again. Plus, considering the next event is in 5 days' time, for us as we're recording the show right now, we haven't had an event like that where we've had one weekend followed by the next weekend. They're in fine form right now. Yes, you mentioned obviously Priester poor performance. Sure, I'll give you that. But Florida, for the first time all season, beat every one of the top teams. They've shown that sign of improvement throughout the entire season. Where they faltered in the past, they've shown that improvement now. I mentioned earlier on in the show, I think Awakening is the real deal. I really do believe that. And I think you're going to get to see that again at the Paris Home Series. So just out of sheer respect for the team that won the last event, absolutely, Florida is going to win in Paris.
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said about the momentum that they can carry from the last event into this event, it being our first time having back-to-back events for the weekends. Maybe anything else you want to add on top of your argument, man?
I'm different than Ben, the sense that I had some belief in this team just because the core talent of the roster. Joe and I have talked about it a lot. Like, they are pretty stacked from top to bottom. Like, they have a lot of talent. They can compete at the top. They've just been wildly inconsistent. And listen, if I was just Maven right now, maybe I could pick them to win. But bald Isaac Newton just can't see it happening. There has been a trend. There has been a pattern. And I just don't see them going back to back. On top of that, no one's gone back to back yet. Just don't see it happening. FaZe are still my favorite.
The problem is,
you just gotta look. The stars align. The pattern's been no one going back to back. Dud. You just gotta see it. You gotta see it, Ben.
I have apologized to Ogre 2 so many times this season for underestimating Florida, hell, I'll do it again.
No, I think they can win. They're just not my favorite.
I think they're going to win. I mean, sure, not your favorite, but for me, I think they are, right? Simply because they did win the last event, and we haven't had back-to-back weekends so far this season. So maybe that explains why we haven't had a back-to-back. And also, that's kind of an illogical argument, too, for the simple fact that sometimes teams have won an event and not actually been at the following event. So saying, oh, back-to-back we haven't seen it, doesn't really count all that much this year with this format. So this may actually be the first time where that is likely to happen. So because of that, I'll give Florida the respect they deserve.
Real quick, Benson, I want to throw one more quick question at you.
Sure.
They start off this weekend playing against the Paris Legion. Is that a good team for the Florida Mutineers to start their weekend off against?
I mean, I'll go with yes. They've just shown us that they can beat the top three teams.
Smoke them.
They've just beaten the top three teams in the game, right? Paris Legion, they've been on a massive, massive decline. They've had issues, I believe, toe-to-toe in the past. But, I mean, for me, there's no reason Florida don't cruise through their first game.
All right. Well, with that being said, I'm kind of with you, Benson. I feel like Florida, they're going to come out there, they're going to play against Paris, and then they're just going to get that momentum going and breeze through the weekend to another victory. I kind of definitely see that happen, especially after the way you put it. So with that being said, I'm going to give this round to you, Benson, 4-3, which makes our final score 12-11. Benson, the winner of this edition of Contesting the Point. You get 60 seconds to pop off in our Astro Listen Up moment. What do you have to say to the people, man?
It's just like the old days. It's just like the old days. Me and Clint debating about Call of Duty, me winning. It's a wonderful time to have my uncontested 60 seconds to talk about things. And first of all, I do want to give some love to Clint. I wish we could do this more often. It's nice having all the other talent involved, but I do miss debating Call of Duty with you. It's always a good time. I do also want to kind of go back to something Clint said earlier in the show about the Huntsmen fans and about how, oh yeah, they're the best team in the game. I'm going to have to agree with Clint. I'm going to be honest, that whole argument, I'm with you there, but for me, they have to improve. They do. This whole top three team in the game, boom, knock that out the park. Florida Mutineers have stormed straight in, and I think they've stolen that number 3 spot. So my message goes out to the Huntsmen. As a team with one of, if not, well, the biggest fan base in our league, you have to improve. The performances we've seen have been unlike some of those players. And for me, I want to see them bounce back as quickly as they can because we're getting close to chance time. And I want the best storylines possible come the end of the year.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this edition of Contesting the Point. Special thanks to Benson and Maven for coming here and bringing the fire debates. And guys, we will see you again when CDL action commences this Friday. Hope to see you there.